Portuguese Exploration by Andrew, Isabel, Shanta, Joey, Noah, and Ali. Here's Portugal, a country of eastern exploration and expandment. And here's Prince Henry the Navigator, a man who not only built a school for navigators, but also is responsible for sponsoring Portuguese exploration along the coast of Africa.
He had three motives of exploration, which represent the motives for all of Portugal. Number 1, economic gain. Number 2, to spread Christianity. And number 3, to find Christian allies to battle Muslim countries. Similar to other countries, Portugal's motives can be summarized by 3 words: gold, God, and glory. The motives of gold and God are especially evident in the exploration of Portugal.
Portuguese fleets sailed along the western African coast hoping to find gold. But before fulfilling their gold-hungry needs, they sufficed their economic wants by capturing and selling slaves. An estimated 1,000 slaves would be shipped from Cape Verde, a Portuguese settlement, and sold throughout Europe.
Gradually, the Portuguese furthered their expedition and managed to find gold along the southern coast of Africa, now known as the Gold Coast to Europeans.
Subsequent to exploration came the establishment of trade in Africa. They became trading partners with Bank Congo in order to have access to economic gains such as gold, ivory, and slaves.
Soon the Portuguese were building forts all along the Gold Coast. And then, on the other side of the globe, we have the Americas, or as Columbus should have called it, not Asia.
Portuguese exploration in the New World was limited to Brazil. Pedro Alvarez Cabral was the first Portuguese explorer to reach South America.
There, Portugal established many sugarcane plantations maintained by their slaves from Africa. Sugarcane was the chosen commodity to produce because it was important in Europe. In South America, they also helped the Spanish in accidentally decimating the native population, which is why they brought the African slaves, because everyone else had died. But the Portuguese didn't stop there. No, they were not even close to done.
The Portuguese believed they could reach India by rounding the southern tip of Africa, and sure enough, they were right.
But why did Portugal find it so important to reach India in the first place? I mean, they already had Africa, and trips along longitude were no bueno, believe me.
The temperature changed, stars couldn't be used as navigators, and because maps really sucked, the stars were all they could go on, and the wind was really unpredictable.
So why did the Portuguese feel compelled to make this trip in the first place? Exploration was also sparked by the need for spices, because the Ottoman Empire cut off trade routes to weaken Europe.
This is key. Firstly, this is important because if Portugal can establish trade with India for the spices, the economic gain increases because of how rare spices were in Europe, since the Ottomans cut off trade, which leads us to the religious gain of undermining the Muslim Ottomans.
So the Portuguese were all like, why not? And lucky for them, it worked out.
Portuguese exploration of India was made possible through the findings of 2 explorers.
First, Bartholomew Diaz, and second, Vasco da Gama.
This is Bartholomew Diaz, an explorer who made it around the southern tip of Africa, called the Cape of Good Hope. This was made possible by his use of westerly winds to navigate around the continent. However, he quickly turned his fleet around, fearing that his crew was planning on rebelling against him.
Nonetheless, his voyage proved that the Indian and Atlantic Ocean were connected, and that India could in fact be reached by circling under Africa.
Which brings us to Vasco da Gama, who actually rounded the Cape of Good Hope and landed in the port of Calcutta in India.
Among arrival, he announced he was in search of spices and Christian allies. Although he did not suffice his religious wishes, he did find spices, and upon return, him and his crew were very successful and made a huge profit.
But da Gama is not the only person to be credited with the Portuguese success in the spice trade. For obvious reasons, Portugal returned to India frequently. Over time, the Portuguese began to establish a dominant part in the spice trade.
Soon they started to destroy Arab shipping, and eventually they established a Red Sea blockade. This cut trade off with the Ottoman and Egyptian Muslim rulers for the Portuguese.
This is where Admiral Afonso de Albuquerque comes into play.
He established a land base at Goa, which became the headquarters for Portuguese operation in the region. He also furthered exploration as he sailed into Malacca and seized the city, which acquired a prominent port of the spice trade.
However, when seizing the city, a violent battle occurred that rose tensions between the Arabs and the Portuguese.
Soon the Portuguese launched expeditions from Malacca to China and to other spice islands.
But how did the Portuguese become so successful in the first place?
Much of their success was due to their knowledge and effective use of guns and weapons, along with their seamanship.
Simply put, the military power helped them succeed in defeating the Arabs in the short but bloody battles they were involved in.
However, Portugal did eventually come to a downfall. They lacked the power, population, and desire to colonize other Asian regions outside of the Chinese and Indian coasts. So eventually their flourishing trade era came to a bitter end.
Nonetheless, Portugal's trade and exploration achievements can still be seen in the world geography today, especially in South American languages.
So despite their eventual fall, the Portuguese did succeed in becoming one of the biggest trade-conducting countries of the exploration era.